Hello and welcome to another CLOG Extra. Yes. Today we'll be doing something extra, something different. Okay, so I apologize. I know that there wasn't too much work this week on the CLOG Plunger. That project is still going on. Just been a busy way of work. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a fundamental paradigm of the CLOG Builder, and that is the panel. Now, when you want to create a project, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's actually do a very simple, let's do a very CLOG web project, okay? And let's call it my panels. Okay, let's create that, load the project, and we are ready to go. Okay, so first of all, I've created an empty project. It's probably easier to have started out with a project or you have a panel and things like that. But let's start with here. And let's just create a panel. So let's go ahead and let's add a CLOG file. CLOG files are our panel files. And in this case, let's see, my panel, and hit OK. And that will go ahead and create a panel CLOG file and a panel list file. Now, if I double click on the My Panel, then what comes up, of course, is the builder's ability to be able to GUI design and build our little panel, right? And let's go ahead and save that. Okay, and we can run it, for example, and test it out. Of course, being that in the builder has the ability, kind of like a Delphi-esque type of interface, I can add, of course, code to do all kinds of neat little things. So in this particular case, let's say the target. This is the target. So let's go ahead. Okay, set F. Let's say again, this is one of the earliest examples that I made for when showing some video demos as I was getting into this. So why not? It makes only sense that we should use this same example again. Target, and let's go ahead and actually let's make it a little bit. Well, okay, let's just make it red for now, just so we can see what we're talking about. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, set F, the background color of the target, and I'm going to set it red on click. Okay, let's go ahead and run that, and boom, very nice. Okay, now, of course, my purpose of this particular episode is not necessarily to go through designing applications of the panel, but rather to show you what a panel is. So first of all, the actual contents of this, right? We've saved the file, and let's actually go back. Let's go to our, okay, let's actually close this. Let's go back to here. Well, first of all, let's actually take a look at the CLOG panel itself. Now, if I double click this, of course, the panel builder is going to we're going to just pull that up. So let's view DR. All right, this will actually let us go in here, and I just realized that's still not going to work. Okay, meaning in the DR, I'll show you. In the DR itself, if I go ahead and I click on a CLOG file, it still brings up my builder. Okay, so what I need to do instead is I'm going to have to open up a new source editor, and let's go ahead and let's load a file into the source editor, in this case my panel CLOG. So now, as you can see, right, basically the CLOG file, again, when I've mentioned this before, is actually basically HTML, although it's not really all that editable the way things are now, because again, it's just sort of a run online. So let's do something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and let's load it up in old Emacs. All right, so let's see, Common Lisp and my panel, and let's go ahead and mypanel.clog. Okay, so let's make this pretty. Oh, and you know what? Let's do this. HTML pretty print. Although actually I didn't set any marks. So, let's go here, right? And let's go ahead and do that. So this makes it a little bit more clear. All right, and there we go. So, like I said, in the top of every CLOG panel file, there is a data HTML element. This actually really is an element. It has no real purpose for real HTML, but it does have a purpose in CLOG, and that's where I store essentially a bunch of my own data. And these are actually data these are actually data, what do they call it? I forget for a moment. Basically, these particular properties of the data tag, again, are actually legitimate. You can actually make them up on your own. Anything you want can be stuck in with a data dash attribute. That's it, attribute. So data in packet, data custom slots, data CLOG next ID, CLOG title, etc. Right? And this basically has some information about the panel itself. Now, if we go down to after that, we have essentially just our panel. Our panel really consists of nothing but one tag, and that's button, because that's all that's actually on the panel. In fact, CLOG panels essentially are a blank file until you, maybe in terms of HTML, until you go ahead and add elements to the actual file itself. And this is what will be blasted out by CLOG onto your HTML page. Again, a standard button. Now, all data tags that exist on any element will be erased essentially when the list file is rendered. I mean, in the list file itself, it uses things that are in the data, but it will erase them, so they don't actually end up in your production code on somebody's client machine, which would be a very horrible thing. So then this isn't done on the fly or isn't done with JavaScript. It is actually removed before you've ever compiled the code. So don't worry about that. But now, so in this case, data on click is, of course, that was our little click. That was our on click handler, and that was basically stuck right here. So now, one of the cool things about this, it is, like I said, real plain HTML, which means to say that I can go ahead and I can create my own stuff, right? So hello there, right? Hello world. Let's build a div, and I can go ahead and I can add other things like for example, I don't know, I'll add another button, and that might actually be nice to see what the difference is. Just adding something. Oh, let's do something like this. Here, let's say UL. I am an item. And I'll tell you something else. We're going to go ahead and do the sort of thing that people do, which is basically not close up those tags. And this is still load without any issues whatsoever into our application. That's right. So take a look at this. Now if I go ahead and pull up my panel, boom. It's all in there. These are all selectable, changeable. Basically, they get added just like anything else. So one of the cool things about all this is that you can do plenty of manual editing when you're working with the CLOG Builder. One of the goals of the CLOG Builder was always to have a tool that essentially would work hand in hand with Emacs, or of course it can develop now and do other things IDE-wise itself, but really to be able to work hand in hand with your process, whatever your process might be. And you don't have to use the builder to lay out stuff, although it makes sense in many cases. And I'll tell you what happens is, let's say we go ahead and we render this code, right? Which of course we will do right now. And let's close this again, and let's go ahead, say panel, yes, okay. Now let's go ahead and let's open up the actual rendered file, right? Now the rendered the rendered Lisp is also again very readable. And here you see the actual HTML, right, that basically in the content tag from here to here. And keep in mind, by the way, that, again, this is all straight HTML that's being pumped to your browser, right? And all this information that's in here does not require any kind of fancy stuff. I've basically can use this code someplace else. Let's say you don't like CLOG. Oh my, who would ever not like CLOG? But whatever, let's say somebody didn't like CLOG. And you just wanted basically something to go ahead and to design some HTML for you that you can then drop in. This is one way of doing it. Again, and this will give you a nice Lispy string that you can use and ready to go in any application you want, in any way you want, etc. So just keep in mind, be a little open to see how you might be able to use things. But anyways, the cool thing is, like I said, you can go ahead and edit in pure HTML and load it in and then render it out, and you'll get what you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and give a little example. Let's open up Source Editor, okay, and let's actually write a little quick. Let's see here, HTML, and let's make believe I already had a website that's been running, right? And some kind of web page that I like. It's really cool, and I want to go ahead and coolest stuff, right? And let's go ahead /body I probably should have created a file and saved so I had a format was correct, but it doesn't matter. Okay, HTML. Let's go ahead and let's save this file. My HTML.html. Okay, and let's actually reload that file. See, this way you get colorization of it. Okay. Now what I want you to see is basically I can go ahead. Let's say Builder, New Panel, and I can go here basically to load. I can load my HTML in like that. Whoops! Oh, I went the wrong direction. Okay, I hope I didn't erase it. Oh, actually, it doesn't make a difference. I can actually make sure to save it again. 1 second. Save. Okay. Save. Yes. Okay, so I can go ahead here. Open my HTML, and boom. So basically, here's our div that we just created. And we can go ahead, we can say, you know, position this as absolute. And then we can go ahead, right, and you know, change its element, so forth. And let's go ahead and save it, right? And basically, you know, I now could, technically speaking, go ahead and add a CLOG file. Actually, what did I do? I hit, it went ahead and rendered it as well, didn't it? My HTML.lisp. Yeah, funny. Okay, so basically, it went ahead and did that. I probably would want to save my HTML as a, yeah, I'm going to want to save that. So let's do this. So let's resave it under a file with the CLOG extension. Whoops. So Shift and save, right? And then I can change this to .clog. Okay. The point is that we started out with the regular HTML, loaded in here, made some changes, and then we went ahead and saved it, and it even rendered it and created the file. Now, of course, it's not part of a project because I didn't start with the project and then go to the panel, but I started with the HTML file. So we can go ahead and we can just type the add the CLOG file. In this case, was my HTML, and go like that, and those will all be added in. And there we go. So my HTML CLOG. It's that. There's our file, right? And there is our my HTML file. Why didn't it add the list my HTML? It should have, but actually I noticed this was something that was going on before. Let me try reloading. It might actually be already in the project. Yeah, for some reason, and that's there's different ASDF versions seem to sometimes behave funny. You're probably, if you're making any major changes, you're probably going to want to reload the project. Because again, I'm using the actual ASDF code to handle all the project stuff. So I've noticed that sometimes it picks up, sometimes it doesn't pick up changes that we've made. So again, you just do reload, and it'll reload the actual ASDF file, and everything's fine. So again, here's our list file as well. Everything is there, right? Okay, but this was our original HTML. And let's say that, okay, as we know, right? But the point is, you started with a plain HTML file, and now basically you've got a piece of CLOG and a piece of Lisp, and everything wonderful and hunky-dory. Okay, now let's actually do one more thing. I want to show you, if I go ahead, and one of the things you can do, of course, is copy and paste, right? But one cool thing about copying and pasting, right, is I'll show you something very interesting. You have here what's called the copy-paste history, and that actually lets you go ahead and actually copy out the straight HTML directly from the web page. All right, so that's another thing that you can do. Let's see. Okay, and so one more thing I wanted to show you. Okay, let's actually get at this. See the panel again. Okay, so one more thing I'd like to show you is in the builder, you'll notice you have a few other things. New CLOG GUI, new CLOG web page, new basic HTML page, new CLOG web delay launch. So essentially what each one of the most important, of course, new CLOG GUI panel is what we're always looking at. Now, new CLOG web page, okay, so that essentially opens up a totally blank page, right, and actual in the builder, and we can actually load at that point then. Let's use load. We can load any one of our CLOG files Let's grab a look here, my CLOG panel. Okay, good, that we just did. And it essentially loads it into the web page as opposed to on a panel, right? So when so you can of course do all your manipulations here just as you did before, right? And if you'll notice, by the way, it looks a little different because we did, well, actually it looks the same in that case. Let's do another one, basic HTML, and I want to show you what happens with that. If I go ahead now, the CLOG Web version of new CLOG Web is still running all of our CSS and everything else using WS CSS. But if I do this as a plain Jane HTML with no additions, so let's go ahead here and my panel CLOG, right? So in this one, you'll see it's using the standard HTML, right? In other words, without any kind of CSS added.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens is like this. Again, so you can this way you can actually use, of course, your own CSS, completely different than what would be used in a regular panel. In other words, if you're doing your modifications here in the CLOG Builder, or for example, a CLOG web file. But if you wanted to do, for example, use one of the many other CSS libraries, you could actually do all your manipulation, programming, everything else in CLOG with the CLOG Builder, even though it's using completely different CSS. So I would go ahead and, let's say in a file like this, I would go ahead and let's say I would do add custom HTML, and then I would throw in or style block, and then I would go ahead and throw that in so that it actually becomes part of our project. So again, which page is you're working on depends, of course, on one of these. So again, there we go. So of course, let's close these, and that will close those. All right, and delay launch just allows you, for example, let's say you want to use an Android phone, or you want to use an iPhone or something or another device, and you want to see how it looks on the actual device, then you can go ahead and use this URL, and that will basically pick up the particular panel that you're loading up. Now, the only difference with these are brand new pages. You have to, like I said, like we saw before, once you load the page, you actually have to do a load, right? You actually have to grab the CLOG file once you've loaded this up. By the way, the CLOG file underneath, though, is going to be identical no matter which one you use. So meaning that it just looks as HTML to the builder. New custom boot page, again, that we'll talk about at a different time, and a new application template. These are things we'll talk about at a different time. Basically, new application template, that's the same as actually want a new project. And that will go ahead and just let you pick a particular template that you want to build from. Anyways, but like I said, that's more or less all about panels for our CLOG Extra. All right, be well.